This is the Black Country Blokes tune of fat about everything that is mental health, disability and, well, just life in general. With me, Kev Dillon, Lee Cadman, and our special guest today is Dave Stocks. So Dave, thank you, brother, for coming on.
Thanks, Kev. It's good to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me. You probably regret it by the end of the show, but we shall see anyway. Yeah, I'm a suicide survivor, so I'm here to talk a bit about mental health and how to look after yourself, because now, having come through that myself, I work as a suicide prevention community development worker. So that's why Kev's invited me on the show to talk about mental health, particularly men's mental health, because, yeah, you know, men don't talk about it, do we? We just, we bottle it up, and it's not good for you. It's not good for you. So yeah, I mean, I've got a bit of a story to tell if you want. I don't know.
Well, we'll get into all the nooks and the crannies.
Yeah.
I always say that, nooks and crannies. My daughter went, "Daddy, what's a cranny?" I'm thinking, oh, we won't go down that yet.
No, let's not go down that.
But we'll get into all the nitty gritty after our musical interlude. But as you said, like us blokes, I mean, women, without being sexist, what I've observed over my years, women will talk on the playground, women will talk over a cup of coffee, over a bottle of wine, whereas men will talk about football, and they will even cry over their favourite football team losing, but they won't be allowed to cry about their child being poorly or the fact that they're down. So this is why we originally started the podcast, getting us blokes to talk about the nitty gritty. And this is what we like to do with all of our shows, is start it like we do our support group every Wednesday at the Lions Boxing Club in Brierley Hill, 7pm to 9pm. And it's maybe something that either good has happened this week or something we're grateful for. Me, three of my lads now at the Lions Boxing Club, Osman Mohammed, Matthew Ford and Ben Collins, are now through to the pre-quarters of the Nationals, so they'll be fighting on the 14th in Nottingham. I'm grateful. It's funny, you know, after having Emily from Gravy Banana and Lisa from Willow Daisies.
That's Louise.
Louise, oh, so close, so close. And the beauty of being grateful. And I said this on our podcast the other day. I was at the Black Country Museum with my beautiful wife and my daughter, and we're queuing up for the chip shop. As everyone knows who's been to the Black Country Museum, the chips are wonderful. And the queue is taking forever. It was taking forever. And I was going, blooming heck, how long am I going to be in this queue? And going down the rabbit hole as I always do. I'm fed up of waiting. And I went, stop. You're with the people you love the most. We're on a day out. Who cares how long the queue is? You're with the people, and all you're going to do is ruin the day by being grumpy. And that's what I've started doing. Realising when I'm about to go down the rabbit hole of stuff I can't control. I'm just going, well, I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I can stand up and queue. I'm lucky that I've got money in my pocket to buy chips. I'm lucky that... And by breaking that, you know, by doing that, I've been sleeping so much better all of a sudden. For a person who's struggled with sleep all my life, isn't it funny, by changing things into realising that it's not all doom and gloom and there is so much to be grateful for, I'm finding myself being content. How about you, Lee?
Oh, mine's easy. I'm allowed out the house again.
Freedom!
After over 2 weeks of COVID being in my immediate household, and me isolating, even though I didn't have it, I didn't want to pass it on to anyone else or risk pass it on to anyone else. I'm allowed out again. But also, my children, my two children got it, my two eldest. Luckily, my youngest, who's got the severe disability, didn't get it. But that's me. It's just a blessing that she didn't get it, and the other two really didn't affect them that much at all.
And Dave, what's good's happened or things you're grateful for?
What's good's happened is you just mentioned about getting some good sleep, because I really struggle with sleep, and I can really relate to that. But you know, just little tips about getting everything in perspective and just going with the flow a bit. I think that could help with my sleep, because if you don't get the sleep, you really you feel bad all day anyway. So sleep's so important. So just that, just those few words about queuing for the chips, that's really helped me already. So it's useful little tips like that you can pass on to people. I think that's really good. Just little things. So yeah.
But what I do, and once again I'm on my journey, and I've been to hypnotherapy, NLP, and I love it. I love it, picking up little gems. And sometimes you forget about these things. But what I'm doing at the moment, I get into bed and I go, you know what? I have done. Well, Osmer is fighting this lad. He's going to be a southpaw. What he's got? And I go, stop. I have done everything I can do today, and I will do the same tomorrow. Now is the time to rest. And then I go, well, how about? And I go, stop. That's tomorrow's problem. I can't do anything lying here. All I can do now is recharge the battery. And then I go, I'm grateful for the bed. And I don't want it just to be, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for my gym. Because that becomes, I am very grateful for that. I love them most things in the world. But it's then going, as we've said, Lee, I'm grateful I've got running water. Once I go to the toilet, I can flush the toilet. And those little things that, it's not until you have a blocked up toilet you realise how much a luxury of a flushing toilet is. And these little bits and bobs, and I think on our journey, we expect the world to be these massive, big, phenomenal, and a lot of it is just, my trousers fit, my zip on my fly closes, and, whatever these small little victories are, they can make your day better, can't they?
Yeah, it's the little things. I think sometimes we can forget about the little things. And the other thing that I find is a lot of us have this inbuilt negative filter. So it filters out all the good things that have happened, and it just focuses on the bad things. So you can get to the end of the day and think, I've had a really bad day. But if you look at it and analyse it properly, you probably find that you've actually had a good day. There's been a lot more good things in the day than there has been bad. It could have been raining, but oh wow, that was a fantastic rainbow I saw. And you could have had back-to-back meetings, but God, there's some great people in those meetings, and I met some really new friends and made new contacts, and it's just you can put that negative filter on things, and rain brings rainbows, meetings bring meeting new people. It's looking at it in a different perspective and looking at it a positive way. So yeah,
finding that positive in the negative situation of the day, isn't it? But we was talking, actually, it might be in the last podcast on Tuesday, Kev, about how having that negative mindset can put you in a spin for the rest of the day. It starts you off wrong, and then when you're started off wrong, you see all that negative easier, if that makes sense. So if you're having a bad day when you first get out of bed, you keep that bad day going instead of stopping and going, actually, I did snub my toe on the bed, but it's not going to make the rest of the day a terrible day. It's just, I did that today. You've got to kind of get over that. I mean, you can keep going, keep moving forward, and change that attitude from, I have got that meeting later that I'm dreading, but you know what, I get to see that person in this meeting, or I'll get to do that in this meeting, and find that positive within the negative situation.
Yeah. It's also taking a bit of time out for yourself as well. So if you've had a bad start to the day, well, maybe take a bit of time out and do something that you really like, even just for 10 minutes. Just do something you really like. Listen to music that you really like, or go outside and listen to the birds if there are any birds where you are, and anything that just lifts the mood. So do things that you like, and that can get you back into the right sort of mindset. So just taking time out, stepping away from it, that really helps.
My mate said something to me the other day, because I love quotes and I love picking people's brains. And he says, you know what, Kev, you should treat yourself like your cat. I went, my cat? I'm always telling my cat off. He went, yeah, but whenever Silla's hungry, you feed it. Whenever she wants watering, you give her water. Whenever she wants a bit of fuss, you give her a stroke. Whenever she's poorly, you take her to the vets. I went, yeah. And he goes, do you give yourself breakfast? I went, no, I'm in a rush. He goes, when you're feeling a bit down, do you give yourself a bit of love? When you're poorly, you go to the doctors? I went, no, you want to treat yourself like your pet. Never mind your child. Treat yourself like your pet. And I thought, how simple, but how right. Because it's such a cliche. Self-love, give yourself 5 minutes. But we often don't do it. And I always say, no matter what is going on, no matter how blue I feel, and my phone goes, I answer it, and I'm always trying to help people. But we often don't give ourselves that same love, do we?
No. And I'm pleased you brought up pets, because I got 2 cats, 2 dogs, 2 rabbits. Well, me and my wife have got 2 cats, 2 dogs, 2 rabbits, and 2 fish. So you can call me Noah if you want.
They come by 2 by 2.
Yeah, that's right. But it's there. They sort of, in our household, they come top of the pecking order. I know my place.
Yeah.
But we love them, and we always make sure that they get looked after really, really well. So that idea of treating yourself like your pet, I've never heard that one before, and I think that's really good. So I'm picking up tips all the time from this show, and treating yourself like your pet is really good. And what I find is I can tell people what they should do. I'm very good at telling people what they should do, but I think it's your own inclination. You're not very good at doing it yourself. So what we've all got to do is think, now, what would I tell someone else to do? And do it yourself. So, be kind to yourself, and do look after yourself, and look after yourself like you would look after your pet. And the other thing about pets is they're very therapeutic. So it's lovely. I took one of our dogs for a walk earlier, and just went past the local school, local playground. This big fluffy dog, and all the kids said, "Oh, dog, dog, dog!" And they came running over to the fence, and the dog's called Plato, and said, "Oh, he's Plato," and because he's a bit of a deep thinker, and they were all stroking him through the bars and just chatting and saying, "Oh, we've got a dog," or "I'd love a dog," and it was great. We had about 15 kids around us. It was just so lovely, and the kids get all that love from a dog, and so do we, and so pets can be really, really therapeutic.
You've got to find, and we've always said we've got to find our medicine, but it's like a recurring thing I heard, and I hear it so often from us blokes. I didn't want to bother you, Kev. Yeah, I know. But I know what you're doing, Kev, and I know you. But I didn't want to bother you. And I went, as long as I keep answering the phone, you're not bothering me, because I'd much rather you interrupt my Sunday dinner or I'm watching a programme than for you to go and hurt yourselves. But I think a lot of it comes into our self-worth, doesn't it? Once again, I will put everyone before myself because I don't want to put Dave or Lee or Mom or Dad or whoever out. And we've got to have that bit of self-importance, haven't we? And there's not... When we hear the words self-importance, we think, oh, arrogant, oh... But there's nothing wrong with having that self-importance that I will put my needs and my health and my mental well-being before things. And, do you recognise that? Have you suffered with that as well, David? That I don't want to put people out because maybe...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I do particularly, and I find, and this is something I worry about, because I work in the NHS. I think I should always put people first before me, because that's my job, and that's what I should be putting people first. But I'm naturally inclined that way anyway. I'd always want to put someone before me, and that's why I took my role, because I can make a difference to people's lives, and that's what counts to me. So yeah, you always do put people first, but in a strange way, by putting people first, you're putting yourself first as well, because by helping someone else, it helps you, because one of the 5 ways to well-being is giving, and giving is helping someone else, and it gives you a sense of self-satisfaction, self-reward by being able to help someone, being able to change someone's life for better.
You know what, David? Funny enough, again, we've been talking about this recently, and as we started up the podcast and started doing the radio and doing all these things, to begin with, I was absolutely dreading it. It's not natural for me to talk at all. It's not natural for me to talk with people who are close to me. I've always been the shy one, Anna, Kev. So to open up and start doing this, but what I realised is not only are we helping other people, hopefully, but it's really helped me as well. It's helped, getting these things off my chest myself and talking, and so yeah, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? You're helping on both. You're helping other people and you're helping yourself. You
are, yeah, by sort of letting your own problems out. It is therapeutic. I think there's a posh word for that, but
we certainly ain't posh here.
But it's like with people in the volunteer sector, like we do everything volunteering, the boxing club, like I'm the head coach, Lee's one of my coaches, and you do it because you enjoy it. You do it because you enjoy it, and that's the reward when you see these babbies, you become blokes or women, and you're giving your knowledge, and it is, it's rewarding in seeing you have made a difference in someone's life. You know what I mean? And when you're not getting paid, you've got to be doing it for some reason, giving up all your free time, your own blood family and your weekend. So we do it because we enjoy it, and that's the reward, isn't it? Will I ever be a financially rich man? I doubt it. But I'll always consider myself as wealthy. I'm wealthy in experience, I'm wealthy in love, you know what I mean? And that's my wealth, and I will take that to the graveyard. The telly will break. But hopefully the memories won't. They won't fade as fast. But I think, Lee, if we go to a couple of songs, then after we've had our songs, we'll go into all the nooks and crannies of Dave and what his story and all the great work they're doing in the trenches. And we're back. That was Aerosmith for our Jules. I hope you've enjoyed it. Dave just said you love Aerosmith, so we thought we'd grab it in for you. And now we're going to be here now, back with Dave Stocks. So Dave, tell us a bit about your journey. I was saying you're a suicide survivor. So if you don't mind, just could you tell us a bit about it, please?
Yeah. My journey, it started in the middle of the night. I was admitted to hospital, Dorothy Patterson Hospital in Walsall, in the middle of the night, and I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was in total meltdown, and I was just scared of life, really, and I got sat down and I was waiting to see the doctors and nurses, but it wasn't the doctors and nurses that came to see me. It was one of my fellow patients, service users, whatever you want to call us, said, "Dave, do you want a cup of tea?" And that cup of tea, that meant the world to me.
Human kindness.
It's human kindness, it was like a life raft to me. And we got chatting, and I realised, and it was only then that I realised that I wasn't on my own. It wasn't just me that was going through these things, through these difficulties, through these thought processes. I wasn't on my own. And so that cup of tea was totally invaluable. And I was talking about this earlier. There's not so many activities on the wards. And because there weren't many activities, there are no more now. But I'll always push for more. Always push for more activities. There weren't many activities on the ward, and at the time, I'd started writing a book, and it was on a beat-up old laptop, and technically, you weren't allowed laptops on the ward because of PAT testing and blah-de-blah-de-blah. But thankfully, the staff were really flexible, and the nurses said, you know what, we'll look after it for you. So they kept it in the linen cupboard for me for safekeeping. So there I was, in and out of the linen cupboard, day in, day out, getting my laptop and writing my book. Well, of course, it did arouse the curiosity of my fellow patients, and they said, Dave, can't help noticing that you spend rather a lot of time in the linen cupboard. Difficult one to get out of. Well, I said, it's not that I've actually got a fetish for clean linen. I'm keeping my laptop in there. They said, oh, really? Yeah, keeping the laptop in there. What are you doing with your laptop? Oh, I'm writing a book. A book? Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. And as the days and weeks went by, they got more and more interested in what I was writing. And eventually they persuaded me to read out some of what I'd written to the rest of the ward. So you might have gathered I got a bit of a sense of humour, certainly a warped sense of humour. And so I picked a humorous chapter to read out, and there was nothing more rewarding than having a ward full of depressed patients laughing at something I'd written. And that really made me feel good and made me feel that I was doing something worthwhile. So I kept writing the book, and the book became my therapy. And the end of my stay in hospital coincided with the end of writing my book. So, it really was my therapy. And that sort of meant the world to me. And on leaving the hospital, I got a careers advisor. Unfortunately, it wasn't the right one for me or the right fit for me.
I haven't met a good one yet.
There are good ones, but we'll get into that. And this careers advisor said, what would you like to do? And I said, well, I would quite like to get my book published. It would be lovely if he was interested in the answer, because he went, well, no chance, mate. No one ever gets a book published. Now, you got to remember, this was my therapy for all those months in hospital. This is what got me out the other side. In those few words, is crushed.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of stubborn, so I sent it off to a publisher anyway. Thank God I did. So I got a publishing contract by return post, and I went on to have a successful book launch in Nottingham Waterstones. Now, you probably can tell by my accent that I'm not pure Black Country. So I'm from the East Midlands, I'm afraid, but I've crossed over to the Black Country and I love it now. And at the time, I'd just moved from Nottingham to the Black Country, and so I had the book launch in Nottingham Waterstones because that's where I knew best at the time, and I also had a full-page article in the Nottingham Evening Post about me and my book. And then I thought, this was fantastic. It made me want to give something back. So I started volunteering for Rethink. Rethink is a mental health charity. And I started volunteering for Rethink. And this is where things got rather strange, because through Rethink I took part in a sort of campaigning at the party conferences that year. It's quite a number of years ago. And at the party conferences, I bumped into a rather foppish, sort of bumbling politician that I'm afraid some of you may know now, a certain Boris Johnson. And as a result of bumping into him, there was a full-page article on me in The Guardian on People Power about mental health and how we can change things for the better with mental health, how things needed improving. And unfortunately, there was a picture of me next to Boris. And I say unfortunately because I was in a Mad Hatter's outfit at the time.
I bet you couldn't say which one was which.
Well, I'll get you onto that, because I do promise I gave Boris's outfit back afterwards. So yeah, that spurred me on, because I thought, right, I'm making a difference on even a bigger scale now. So it really made me want to give back more. And Rethink, they told me about an organisation called Radar. Radar is the Royal Association of Disability Rights. Now, they said they're sort of trialling a leadership programme, and why don't you apply to be on it? And I thought, well, I'm not a leader. No, I'm just little old me. And I didn't really know that mental health was considered a disability then, but I was told it was and encouraged to apply, and I was delighted that I got a place on the leadership programme. And the great thing about that leadership programme, it wasn't the coaches, it wasn't the workshops, it was all the other disabled people that were on it with me. Everyone had their own story. Everyone inspired everyone else, and it was peer support. And peer support, it's not just if you've got a mental health condition, you're a peer with someone with a mental health. It's any disability. You've got that peer support. You can connect with other people, and it was that peer support. All the inspiring stories that I heard and the changes in people. That's what made the difference for me. And then from graduating from the leadership programme, I say graduating, it's not with a degree. I don't think I've got a qualification to my name. But from graduating from the leadership programme, I then wanted to volunteer for Radar, because they'd done a lot for me. And through Radar, I took part in the MP Dialogue Scheme. Now, the MP Dialogue Scheme is you contact your local MP and arrange to meet them and talk to them about disability or mental health issues. So I contacted my local MP and I thought, he's not going to reply. I got a reply straight away and said, do you want to meet me in a few days' time? So I went to his constituency office and I thought, this is an MP. The MPs eat policies for lunch and possibly constituents too. And I thought, all right, I bumped into Boris, yeah, but I did have a Mad Hatter's outfit on at the time. So I was undercover. But this is proper talking to an MP, and I talked to him, and he was a real down to earth guy, really down to earth. And he said, no, we don't eat policies for lunch. No, we have a team of people brief us on anything that we any new area that we get into. So no, we don't know everything about everything. And I also, I gave him some tips on mental health and disabilities, and we decided a way forward to improve mental health and disability in the area. But he also told me something that I didn't know at the time about post-traumatic stress disorder, because he did a lot of work for the armed forces, and at that time there was people that had fought in the Falklands many years ago that are only just coming down with post-traumatic stress disorder, and I didn't know that you could get such a delayed response with post-traumatic stress disorder. So that I learned something from him. So it was encouraging to know that an MP was taking an interest in mental health as well, and it's a genuine interest.
Do you want to know the MP? Is he from around here?
He was, oh God, you know what I'm like with names. His first name was Brian, but I can't remember his surname.
So I think it's good when we can give these good people a shout out. We've had Mike Wood, Marco, and he's a counsellor for us, but Adam Davis, the amount of good work he's helping me, Lee and Lions Boxing Club do. And I think sometimes when we think of these MPs, the councillors, our back goes up thinking, oh, well, I've read the papers, and I even get like with anything in any service, there's good ones, and I think there is more good than there is bad. But if you can get someone on side on your level, and we expect people to know everything about everything.
Yeah.
But if you are from disability, you are a carer, or you have been born, or you've got a disability, obviously you have more empathy towards it, like with mental health, and it takes people like ourselves to bring these topics up, like disabled toilets or these things, because you go, well, I saw a disabled toilet. I never thought to check if I get a wheelchair in there, or I never thought to check that, oh, well, the lift's out. Well, how's Calla Rose going to get up there? And it's, unless you're from that world, how are you supposed to think about it? And I think the only way that the higher-ups, the lower downs, will think about it is if we bring it to their attention.
Yeah, that's right, and it did make me laugh when I read about the climate summit. One of the visiting politicians couldn't get in because they had a wheelchair and they hadn't thought about it. So
that's absolutely disgusting, isn't it? Really, in this day and age, it's terrible.
It's unbelievable that they. I just couldn't believe that they'd not thought of that. It's just terrible. Yeah.
We were saying like about that. Sorry to go off subject, but it's all right saying like the Crooked House that was built in. They haven't got this. It's a listed building, and some things you think, well, that's old, but every building and every property that is built from today should be built to a higher spec, so people can go to the toilet, so wheelchairs can fit through doors. We can't blame people on the past for not knowing what we know now, but what we can change is what we do from this moment in time. Do you agree with that, Lee?
Yeah, definitely. I'll go further. I think anywhere where you are able to make accommodations, it should be done. There is ways round it all the time, even for somewhere like the Crooked House. Really, there is ways round it. But It's almost like if you're disabled, it's almost like it's a privilege if you can get to go to the toilet. You know, it's almost like a privilege that you can get into a shop instead of being just a normal thing. Because that's all anyone who has any kind of disability, all they want to be able to do is live their life like any other person, and not have to think about these things in advance or whether they can go. You know, we spoke to Jed, didn't we, from America on the podcast, and he mentioned it then. It's just sometimes he lives in America and he gets left behind from his family because he can't make it up to the next level, or he can't get through that door. He can't. I'm just thinking, in this day and age now, we should be better than this. We should be treating people better than this.
We certainly should. We certainly should. And it's all about making the playing field level. A disabled person shouldn't have to even think when they go out that they've got any barriers to overcome. It should all be there, ready, set for them. So it should. The world should be just as accessible for them as any of us. And the fact that there are barriers out there, it's just not acceptable in this day and age. And it's all about, it's a sort of social model against the medical model of disability. And the social model, disabled people, society adapts to help disabled people access what they need to be able to access, whereas the medical model, it's more that the disabled person needs to adapt, which is wrong. So
I love that advert, the Paralympics, and they're all doing it. They're swimming, they're lifting weights, and then that woman can't go into the shop because there's a curb. And I thought, because the Channel 4 have done such a brilliant job with having had the Paralympics. Yeah. So it was always the Olympics, that other thing afterwards. But, God bless Channel 4 because they've done it brilliant. But I thought that advert, the superhumans, and there's got to be something wrong with you to be in the Paralympics. But that was a double entendre. Yeah. Got to be physical, but there's got to be something bonkers with you to defy all odds. And I think they've done it brilliantly. Yeah,
no, it's fantastic. And, the Paralympics is a fantastic thing. And a lot of people don't understand it's actually Parallel Olympics is what Paralympics stands for. And people misuse that term, so they've just as abled as any of us. It's just in a different way, and I think the Paralympics is a fantastic thing, absolutely fantastic, and we're rather good at it as well. So,
but having your mental struggles, let's call it, was it then? Because we're going to go into obviously the actual journey of suicide. But it was it then rewarding, as we were saying, to get into that kind of field? Because mental illness and physical disability, or mental disability and all these different forms, they do go hand in hand, aren't they? But sometimes, me and Lee talk about this, like his daughter is in a wheelchair, it is a visible disability. You can see if the baby's poorly or she's screaming with delight. But then sometimes, like with an autism or a colostomy bag, or even myself being a high-functioned, being blind person, you could think I'm being ignorant or being awkward, whereas I've got an invisible disability. Yeah. And that's when it becomes more tricky because, why are you making such a fuss? They're over there, or why? When you can't see the disability, we become very up on our high horse and very... Some people can be very nasty and spiteful about it, can't they?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the old disabled parking base badge and things like that. It can be really, really difficult with an invisible disability. I mean, mine's invisible, obviously, because it's mental health. I have a bipolar mental health condition, which means I can either get really, really high or really, really low. And if I'm acting strange, people will think it's just being awkward or whatever. But I'm actually, no, I've got an invisible disability. I've got a bipolar mental health condition, and I may be thinking I'm Superman one moment, but that's part of my condition. And people have got to be more forgiving to those who've got invisible disabilities, and there's so many invisible disabilities. There's neurodiversity, which encompasses all sorts of things, including autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, various different disabilities, and most of them totally invisible. And someone quoted me a figure, I don't know if it's right or not, but I assume it's right, that 90% of disabilities are invisible. So that's a huge amount. So
it's not like you wear a big badge, is it? Saying don't be awkward because because most people, well, all people, they want to get in. They want to. And I said, growing up, I wanted to be the average kid. I didn't want Sir and Miss to point me out because you just want to fit in. It's not until you get older and you want to be extraordinary and you want to be this. But most of us just want to live in peace. Bring attention to me, but it's good attention. Like, I've done well, or I've got my radio show, or you don't want to go like, oh, look at the different kid over there. He's, and no one wants that, do they? To be pitied or pointed out.
No, that's right. Yeah. I just remember the politician Brian Jenkins.
I've been your Brian.
Yeah. I just got to drop his name in because he's a great guy, a really good guy. It's the invisible disabilities and things are just so people so not understanding, and things aren't adapted for people with invisible disabilities so often. Neurodiversity is one. Lighting can be a problem. Sort of meeting people can be a problem. It depends on the sort of where you are in sort of the spectrum of neurodiversity, etc., on what adaptations may be required. So there's so many things that get unseen because they are unseen, and that's the difficulty. And also you have this stereotype of disabled people, yes, which is the wheelchair.
Yes.
And that is one category of disabled people, and a very important category, but it doesn't encompass everyone. So you do need to consider the whole disabled field as a whole, and the invisible side is, as I say, 90%. It speaks for itself. It's massive. So,
but like disabled parking or disabled toilets, and you'll see people like running over going, "Provey."
Yeah.
Hey up.
Yeah.
Either parking. I've got my husband's visually impaired, or X, Y, and Z, or I've gone to a disabled toilet. Well, I'm wearing a bag or I'm wearing a peg, and it's, well, why have I got to justify it to you?
Well, I think there the problem is actually the people who are using those things and they don't have a disability, Kev. It's not actually the problem with the person who may have a hidden disability. I pulled up to disability parking loads of times and there hasn't been a badge in the window. No, it might have been that they've forgot to put the badge in. Or it might have been that they've gone, actually, that car park's a bit, that parking space is a bit closer, so I'm just going to go in it. And it's the same with the child and parent ones. It's no different. There's many people who parked in there and they're just on their own doing a bit of shopping.
But yeah, with everything, there's going to be people who are misusing it. With everything, there's going to be someone who, as I say, misusing it. But you feel like, is it your job to have a go at someone? And once again, we assume that they are breaking the rules. And have we got that right to do it?
Well, I think you do, in the sense of not have a go at them, but I think you definitely ought to have the conversation. I think you ought to go up and ask that conversation whether it's their right, because how are you going to change it if not? I'm not saying going in there all gun blazing, but walk up and say, actually, do you realise that's for disabled? And they could turn around and go, actually, I am. disabled. Fair enough. But if you didn't ask that question, then people are going to use those spaces who aren't entitled to use them. Who else is out there to ask the question is what I'm saying.
What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I do. I think they should be asked the question. And, yeah, I would say politely challenge, because you do get some aggravated people nowadays, but you should politely challenge and say, look, it's, you know, this is for disabled people, and, you know, I respect it if you are, but if you're not, if a disabled person can't get a space, that means so much more to that disabled person being able to access what they need. So, yeah, I would say politely challenge. It's a tricky one, because there are some tricky people in the world nowadays, but they do need challenging on some level. Definitely, yeah.
Well, Lee, we're up to our hour, so should we go to a couple of songs, mate, and we'll come back in with Dave's story in a bit. And we're back. The Black Country Blokes chewing the fat on our home Black Country Xtra, and we're still here with Dave Stocks. So, Dave, carry on with your story, bruv, about, you know, your journey with suicide and coming out on the other end.
Yeah. So, now where did I get to? I'd done the radar leadership program, hadn't I?
Yes.
Yeah. And then the MP dialogue scheme. So I had an old chinwag with Brian Jenkins, that I've now remembered his name. It's pretty good for me, because I don't remember names very well. Great guy, really good guy. Yeah, that helped me a lot. And at the end of the MP dialogue scheme, there was a reception in Parliament, and they said, Radar approached me and said, Dave, do you want to speak in Parliament? And I thought, maybe not. Not a good idea. Yeah, as you can tell, I'm a bit of a sort of butterfly when it comes to speaking, so I thought, no, this Lord's gentleman and yeah, all that jazz. No. Somehow they persuaded me that I would. So we got to Parliament, and in this parliamentary room, packed to the rafters with lords, ladies, OBEs, MBEs, and me. And when it came to my turn, I got to the lectern, I looked out, and I thought, oh, we're on radio, aren't we?
Yeah.
I can't say the second word.
Don't. Please don't.
So I didn't say the second word. And I looked out, and I talked for 10 minutes. And to this day, I have not a clue what I talked about. But at the end of that speech, if you want to call it such, you could hear a pin drop, and then the biggest round of applause that I've ever heard. And I have no idea, as I say, to this day, what I said, but it obviously made a difference. And that was important to me. And of course Brian Jenkins was there, so it was nice to see him again. And yeah, it was a key moment for me, because there I was making a difference in one of the most important places that you can make a difference. And I really felt rewarded and able to give something back. And then Radar got funding for a full-blown leadership program, and this was a 3-year leadership program. And I was asked, do you want to apply to run the leadership program. I thought, I'm still not. I waffled on a bit in Parliament. Yeah, I bumped into Boris Johnson in a Mad Hatter's outfit, and I was lucky. I met a nice politician, Brian Jenkins, who's a good down to earth chap. So yeah, I've been sort of in the leadership areas, but I'm not really a leader type person myself. And I thought, no. And I looked at the job spec, and you got to have done this and this experience, and there was words in it I didn't even understand. So I thought, can't do that. But somehow I was persuaded to apply for it, so I applied for it, and I was amazed to get an interview. And then, of course, I had the interview from hell. And as you may have noticed, I do have a bit of a sense of humour, and during the interview I tried to crack the odd little joke, but one of the directors that was interviewing me had a total poker face. He was not amused at all. I thought, I ain't got this, definitely not. So this was in London, and I packed my bags and headed off home. I thought, well, I tried. That's all you can do. And I was amazed the next day to get a call to say that I got the job. And funnily enough, that director that was poker-faced, I was his best man at his wedding a few years ago. So it just shows, So don't despair if you ever have an interview that you don't think's gone well, because it's not necessarily the case. And that job, other than the job I'm doing now, was the best job I've ever done. And it wasn't the high-profile successes that meant the most to me. We had people set up successful businesses, get MBEs, even become mayors. It wasn't those. It was the people at the start of the programme wouldn't say boo to a goose, had the stuffing knocked out of them, and by the end of the programme saying how much it changed them, what they were going to do to their life, standing up in front of 100 people and saying this, and all the dreams and aspirations that they'd now got and where they were going to go. That's what meant the most to me, and that was priceless beyond anything. So,
because they'd seen you've been through the wars with your journey, they can relate to you, can't they? And I think experience can be more important than a qualification when you come to that relating to people, can't it?
Yeah, that's right, and that's where it counted. That's where it counted in that job. My lived experience. That's why I got that job, and that's why I got this job as a suicide prevention community development worker. It's that lived experience. That's what's made the difference. And my hat is off to both the employers, to my current employer, Black Country Healthcare, and to Radar, for giving me the opportunity, without the qualifications, but with believing in me because of my lived experience. And more organisations and companies should be like that, to value that lived experience.
And suicide is such a far-reaching thing, isn't it? And the people I've known who've completed suicide, those who I know who have tried to complete suicide, and the depths of despair are different for different people, aren't they? And how many times I hear it go, well, what have you got to be suicidal about? You've got everything. But we don't know what goes behind closed doors. We don't know what goes on in someone's house. Some can be drove into it by finance. Some people can be at work. It could be through grief, through mourning. But it is different to everyone, isn't it? And we shouldn't be judgmental in it, should we?
No, that's right. And so my own I said that story is one part of the story. I also did try to take my life, and I took an overdose when I was working at a certain organisation. I'm not going to name the organisation. And one thing that stood out to me was the lack of understanding of mental health, because I was struggling with my mental health at that time. I told my manager, and they were well aware that I was struggling with my mental health, which meant that I wasn't performing quite as well with my job. It wasn't a massive underperformance, it was just a slight underperformance with my job. So what the manager did in that job was exactly what a manager shouldn't do. She stood behind me looking over my shoulder most of the time while I worked. So I was in a microscope, under constant scrutiny, and that's what I literally took an overdose at work because of the pressures at work. Thankfully, it wasn't successful. I didn't take enough, but that's the pressures that can be exerted from a bad work environment, what I would call a toxic work environment.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. There's only a few things in life that can kind of send you to that point, isn't it? It's usually something along the lines of work, family life, or money. And it's absolutely, it's fantastic that we've got better within mental health, within working environments, but there's still a lot of improvements to make. Me and Kev are very lucky. We do some talks now around certain construction firms. We have other firms who are coming on board in the next couple of weeks. And when you're talking to the people who were kind of in charge of bringing us in, the passion they know, you're now seeing these people to get people like us in and talk about our experiences. Because again, me and Kev aren't qualified to do any of this. It's all off the cuff, innit, Kev? We wing it, basically. But
we've been through the mill, haven't we?
We have. We're experienced in that way, but there's definitely a drive to push it further, but we've got to be careful at the moment, because we're also seeing there's a lot of people out there who are going, or a lot of companies out there going, right, we need to get everyone mental health first aid trained. And that is fantastic. Yes, get people mental health first aid trained, but don't stop it there. Because all your mental health, yeah, well, that's it. It's a tick box. And mental health first aid trainers are there to deal with an emergency, aren't they? That's the whole thing. You know, you're there to help in an emergency situation, but you need to catch these things before that point. We need to be talking more, and companies need to step up to that plate, and help people more. Yeah,
I totally agree on that, and that's the approach I take in my job. You've got to be proactive rather than reactive. I consider if someone gets to crisis stage, then we've failed. No one should get to crisis stage. It doesn't mean that we don't provide the support for crisis stage, because people will get to crisis stage, unfortunately. You absolutely have to have the right support for crisis, but it's much better to be proactive. It's like if the best way to stop a fire burning is not to build the fire in the first place. If you can put out a fire before it starts, then it's so much easier. Once it's started, it is so hard to put that fire out. I do a presentation sometimes which is called Fragile Mind, and it's the 4 stages of a crisis as I go through it. And the first stage of crisis is the silent scream. And the silent scream is where I'm screaming inside, but no one is hearing those screams. sometimes even I won't hear those screams. And that's a silent scream, but that's the easiest stage to be able to help someone, because you pick up someone's struggling at that stage. It's easier to help them and get them on the right path. The next stage, trying to
sorry to butt in there, but that is the silent scream is basically, but we've got to make people aware of that so they speak up when they're feeling that, aren't they? Because we won't recognise it if it's silent.
No, you won't recognise a silent scream. One is you make people aware of it. So by putting this presentation together, I put the presentation together for actually crisis support. By putting this presentation together, it made me more aware of myself. So it made me aware of my silent scream. So now if I have that silent scream, I know to tell my wife, tell my support worker, if you've got a support worker, tell my colleagues, tell my friends, tell the whole world. If I'm struggling, the sooner I let people know, the sooner I can get the support and help that I need. So that silent scream, now I know about. Now I've looked at myself, I can now tell people when I first notice that my mood's slipping, I'm starting to struggle in any way, I can tell people. But also, it's for people around you, people that know you, to pick up the signs as well. So yeah, it's a silent scream, but they will pick up things. You will start behaving differently. You won't be your normal self. So you may not enjoy things as much as you normally enjoy, or do activities that you normally, or become more tired, or there's various things that people around you will pick up on. So it's just say to people around you, and for the people around is to look for those things that those signs that someone may be struggling. So that's the idea behind the silent screen.
And then when you recognise those symptoms, you was telling earlier that you then ask twice, don't you?
Yeah, they ask twice. Now, this is such a simple concept, such a powerful one. I first came across it on a Roman Kemp documentary that I recommend anyone watch if they've got the time. But it was on that documentary. It was Our Silent Emergency, that documentary, and on that documentary, he went to Northern Ireland, and there's some young people in Northern Ireland who'd lost their friends to suicide, and they didn't realise that they were suicidal. They were struggling, and they'd been taught this technique, and it's asked twice, and they do it. They were using it for each other, and basically asked twice is, Kev, if I ask you, how are you, how would you respond?
Sound.
Yeah. But if I then followed it up by, how are you really?
Well, I'm all right. I'm just having one of them, and then that's how the conversation starts, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. It gives that person the chance to open up. It shows you're genuinely interested, and two, how are you is, we're all being programmed to say, yeah, fine.
Fine, good.
Yeah. So
you don't care about the answer.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bore you.
Yeah.
I'm all right, yeah.
So the Ask Twice is such a simple concept, and it's a campaign that's been launched by Time to Change, but it is such a powerful concept. And the reason I encourage everyone to ask twice is, I don't usually do statistics because basically I can't remember them. But this one's a fairly easy one. Something along the lines of roughly 75% of suicides are not currently known to services. That's a massive number.
And I feel sorry for these people who they ask for help, be it a crisis number, a doctor's receptionist, or whoever. And just because you're on the phone and it's maternity wards and GPs, and just because you see it every day, the person who comes to that ward, who is on the end of that phone line, it's the first time for them, and it's scary for them. And I think we have to remember that if we're in that job, no matter how many times, if the millionth time we have done it that day, we've got to remind ourselves that person hasn't done it a million times, and have that deeper understanding, because how you respond to that situation can impact that person's life forever.
Yeah, it's crucial. It is such a tough job being on the crisis line, and it's but it's the amount, as you say, the amount of times you have to respond to someone. It's hard because you either get desensitized to it and don't, which could lead to not responding humanely, or you could equally get too involved and you take it home with you, and that can affect you. So it's such a difficult job to do, but you should always try and be empathetic. See, I've used the big words. There you go. Empathetic, and understand what that person's going through. That person is going through the mental equivalent of a heart attack.
Yes.
So,
in fact, we had an MP on, didn't we, Lee? And we were saying that, saying like, if you phone up and say, I'm going to hang myself, I'm going to overdose, and then they could even say, well, can you come back on Tuesday, or I'm not feeling better, and I'll come back a week on Tuesday. And the MP said, well, if you're having pains in your chest, they wouldn't say that. You'll rush straight into help. And I think we have to start seeing the mental health the same as the physical health.
We have.
It's life or death.
It's life or death. And again, that's an area we need to address, because some people can present at A&E with mental health problems, and it's not always necessarily understood because they're mainly physical health focused at A&E. So some cross training there. I think things are getting a lot better, but equally, in the past, I've had a negative experience at A&E, and it's just as life threatening. And if you get a negative experience, that could be the thing that pushes you over. So.
And this is what I say a lot here, because I say I've done lots of different counselling therapies over my years, and if the one doesn't work, don't give up with the recovery. Think, all right then. Oh, excuse me, sneezing all over myself. But if a therapist doesn't work, if you keep trying, if you come to the Lions Boxing Club and we don't gel, go to the Priory Brooklands. Don't give up in boxing because we haven't gelled, and we've got to see that in therapy and with other stuff. But sometimes when you're walking into a gym or you're walking into a therapist or you've picked up the phone, it is petrifying. It's petrifying, and when we're not met with the right love or the right understanding or the right listening, we can throw the baby out with the bathwater, can't we?
Yeah, that's right. You've got to always be empathetic and listening and caring, and as you say, it's not one hat fits all. It really isn't. It just can't, and that's why even your great place, may not suit everyone.
No.
And, there's so much out there. There's so many places. For one thing, we've got the crisis cafes, which are around the Black Country now. So there's one in each borough in the Black Country, one in Sandwell, one in Dudley, one in Walsall and one in Wolverhampton. And they're great places that people can just, out of hours, drop into. And if you're anything like me, your crisis always happens out of hours. So you can just drop into one of these crisis cafes and have a chat.
What could they expect, Dave, from there? What if I was going to go now? What could I expect? What will I be met with?
Empathy and understanding, and they would listen, a listening ear, and also be able to signpost you to more help that would be able to be suitable for you, and if you need emergency, crisis services, they'll be able to get that in place for you, because they have got links to the crisis team if they need to call on the crisis team as well. But they're separate from them. So, they're a listening, understanding ear that are mainly run by people with lived experience. So they've got that understanding, and be able to talk to you and be able to offer you advice that they've gained, but also advice on all the services and things that they know out there. Because one of the big problems is there's loads of stuff out there. It's just knowing that it is out there.
Yes.
So it's almost like a face-to-face Samaritans.
Yeah, it's almost like a face-to-face Samaritans, but to me it's better. I think the crisis cafes are really, really good. So, yeah.
Well, off air, you'll have to tell us that, and we'll try and share some of that. That's very interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just actually written it down, and I'll take a look into it. Hopefully, we can get someone on the show actually to come and talk about it.
I can link you in with people from the crisis cafes, definitely. So, I mean, get someone to come along and talk about them, because they are fantastic. Do a great job.
And something I want to go back to, you saying in your presentation about suicide, that you said the first one, the silent scream. What are the other three things to...
Oh, yeah, I didn't get there, did I?
Butting in again, ain't we?
Yeah. Let me think. What was the next thing? I can't remember what I called the second stage, but it's sort of shattered. I can't. That's not what I called it, but basically that's where I visibly begin to break up and fall apart, and that people can definitely see that I'm going downwards, so to speak, and
depression's taking its toll on me.
Depression's taking its toll, and at that point, certainly action should be taken and help should be provided and support provided, because that stage, I'm still not in total crisis, but it's heading that way, and it's much easier to help me and stop this crisis happening than when it actually arrives.
Because sorry to interrupt, Chicken, but if you've observed the silent scream and you're seeing someone is falling apart, what would you advise me to do now with that person I see it happening to? If someone out there is listening and thinking, oh, that reminds me of our Jeff, it's always poor Jeff, But if you could see Jeff going in there, what would you recommend that I do now?
I would recommend we'll go back to my story. That started with a cup of tea. Yeah. Now, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you now if it wasn't for that cup of tea. So I'd go over to Jeff's and say, fancy a cuppa? Yeah? Have a little old chat and say, yeah. And use Ask Twice if you need to. Yeah. Various techniques of trying to get people to open up, say, look, you're not looking yourself. I know what it's like. I've been through it myself. There's so many different ways of getting people to, and just talk to him. And that listening ear, that's invaluable. Just being listened to is invaluable. And then if there is issues that need addressing, if you can't advise on them, and I'm sure you've got a lot of good advice that you could give, but if you can't advise, then there's the 24/7 helpline that you could contact, which is great. Now, as a service user myself, one thing that I don't like if I get into a crisis is 50 different numbers that I have to ring. It drives me bonkers. We've now got a 24/7 helpline. I'll get the number before the end of the show. We've now got a 24/7 helpline. People can ring that, and they will be directed to the most appropriate place. And it doesn't necessarily mean it'll be clinical, because there's lots of voluntary organisations and community organisations that people could be directed to from the 24/7 helpline, and the crisis cafes as well. So it all links in to all the services that are out there. So the 24/7 helpline is what I like to call a one-stop shop. You don't have to go here, go there.
We want the 999 of mental health, don't we?
To me, that's the Black Country's 999.
Yeah.
So the 24/7 helpline is what I would advise someone to contact if they're struggling. But you can sort of signpost people to all sorts of places. You can get people to go to the GPs and make sure that they do talk about the mental health and not pretend it's physical health. So talk about the mental health, saying I'm struggling, and they could be then referred on to other services that may be appropriate, or the doctor may see that they're actually in crisis and that they need emergency crisis attention, so they can contact the GP. You can help them contact the GP. Sometimes people need that help. They may need the help contacting the 24/7 helpline as well. So don't rely on them doing it. And be there with them when they do it, or help them do it, because you want to make sure the next step has been taken. But it's mainly been a listening ear, and actually someone does care.
And what are the next two? So we've got silent scream, being tired, fatigue, and then
so silent scream, and then sort of shattered, and then it's the inferno, which is basically like my head has gone into a sort of volcano-like mode. Everything is boiling over inside my head, and I can't think straight, and I'm not necessarily a nice person at that time either. And I know I'm not. And that stage is so hard to tackle, so hard to put out the fire, because it's like trying to put out a volcano with a watering can.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important to tackle it at the first or second stage, because once you get into the inferno stage, it's just it's firefighting. It's just sort of holding back what you can, but until it cools down a bit.
Once again, that's when the old bill or the service has been called, and when you're at that inferno stage,
yeah,
it's not the easiest to talk to someone there and to allow them that you're a caring person and you are, because you're just in fight mode, aren't you? Hands are going every effing jeffing. And
yeah.
As you said, I think putting out a volcano with a watering can's a brilliant analogy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It roughly is. It's impossible, virtually impossible at that stage, and then the final stage is broken and blue, because I would normally have been admitted to hospital at this stage, and I would be just a broken shell of what I was. My route then is I would retreat and not speak to hardly anyone, and the only thing that would help me then is time. Yeah, so basically time would be my only healer then. So that's the last stage of the sort of crisis as I experience it. So, yeah.
And as a suicide survivor, what would you tell someone who was where you was? What bit of advice or what bit of solace would you give them?
Firstly, don't be impulsive. Yeah, I know it sounds stupid, but a lot of suicides can be totally impulsive, and if that, just wait, that moment will pass. But also, there's hope. I always, the most powerful word in mental health is hope. There is hope. You can recover, and what seem like overwhelming problems, inescapable problems, can be broken down little bit by little bit. Don't have to be all tackled at once, just little bit by little bit. The people out there that will help you break those problems down, help you get back on track. And also there's people that love you and care about you, and I don't know about yourselves, but when I've been suicidal, I feel worthless. I feel the world is better off without me. And actually, it's not better off without me. There's so many people that love and care about me, and I mean a lot to them. And that's why, even though you don't think you're any good in the world, you are. Everyone is priceless, and there is hope, there is recovery, and I'm living proof of that recovery. And recovery is the other word. You can recover. I'm in secondary mental health, which means I've got a care plan. I've renamed it to recovery plan, because a care plan suggests actually I'm going to be cared for the rest of my life. recovery plan means that actually I'm going to recover. I'm going to be the person I want to be. I'm going to achieve what I want to achieve in life. So an emphasis on recovery rather than care is so important. So, yeah.
And don't live as your diagnosis. I think it's another thing we talked off air the other day.
Yeah.
And so many people live by, I am Dave bipolar, I am Kevin Dillon. And you're thinking, well, that's just one tiny fraction of the jigsaw, which is me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that's another thing that I always like to say is, yeah, I've got a bipolar diagnosis, but I'm a human being first. So don't treat me as my diagnosis. Treat me as a human being. I'm Dave. I've got a lovely wife, Jules, who's enjoying your music mix at the moment. And I've got 2 dogs, 2 cats, and 2 rabbits and 2 fish, as I mentioned before. Love all the animals. I love the outdoors and wildlife. I'm a photographer. I'm a writer. I'm all these things. I just happen to have a bipolar diagnosis. So, yeah, don't live by that label, and don't other people judge you by that label.
And back to your book, what was the name of it and where can people find it?
I knew I'm not actually plugging this book. It's the Celtic Holy Grail Quest. It's a bit of a weird title. I just had this interest in Celtic mythology, and it just led me down this track. And woven into Celtic mythology, I kind of found the origins of the sort of Holy Grails, all to do with Celtic cauldrons and things, and I just got fascinated. So it's both a quest for the origins of the Holy Grail, and it's also a personal healing quest. So yeah, bit of a strange book, and I only include it in my story because I want to. It's a key part of my recovery and things.
That's your medicine?
It was my medicine, yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily recommend people get it, but it's a different book. It's a different book, but it was my healing, and it's what helped me get through, which is another thing that does help people. Is different things help different people, and yes. Creativity helps a lot of people. I find I'm a very creative person, too creative sometimes for my own good, but so anything, writing, art, photography, woodwork, anything creative, I love.
We almost out-teach us that, don't we? I mean, as a child, we're encouraged to have imagination, to play with toys, to draw pictures, to craft. Guys, it's wonderful. And as we grow up, it's almost, I don't know, society beats it out of us, doesn't it? Before on that note, Dave, we haven't got very long now. So it's been an absolute pleasure. I always like to get everyone on here before we go. Have you got any quotes or sayings that have helped you get through life?
You've only got about 30 seconds, Dave. Make it a quick one.
Quotes or sayings that it's my own one. If I do have a bad day, I always say a good day follows a bad day. That gets me through. So if I have a bad day, I think, right, tomorrow's going to be different. It's going to be a good day. So,
well, thank you ever so much, brother, for coming on. Thank you for listening. So until we see each other next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Ta-ra, bit.
All right. Cheers, Kev.